I had an inkling from very early on. My mother kept a painting that I did when I was in Sweden. I must have been 2.5 or 3. And she kept it, framed it, and gave it to me for graduation from Bucknell University, where I went as undergrad. And basically didn't say too much except that she saw my gifts early on and nurtured that all along. Um, it's a painting that I have reframed and I put it in my living room. I walk past it every time I come here to the studio in Princeton, because it reminds me of when I when you don't have an ego, or you're not showing off anything to anybody. Your expressions are pure, and it's exactly the same colors and lines that I use today. and yet there's something deeper there that hopefully today, in my more sophisticated naivete, I can draw back on. So I knew I was an artist. I just didn't know what that meant. And as I describe in my new book, Art and Faith, A Theology of Making, I was drawn into faith through my creative interactions, where I felt really the Spirit inviting me to feel, whenever I painted, I felt the presence of God. I didn't know what to call that. I thought everybody had this experience, until I went to middle school and found out that would be quite an odd thing to talk about. But it was very visceral and real to me throughout my life, and I didn't have language for this. But in college, I began to read authors and poets like William Blake, or certainly Shakespeare and Milton, and I began to understand that there's a biblical origin in terms of creative imagination, and especially in Western literature, that's certainly something that I needed to understand. So I began to read the Bible through literature, and then eventually I ended up William Blake's last epic poem called Jerusalem, which is some 400 pages long. But I waded through several times, and at the end there is an amazing passage that Blake's emanation, Albion, is literally in front of Jesus at the cross. And Albion says, "Oh Lord, what can I do? My self-willed cruel marches against thee, deceitful to meet thee in its pride." This poetry of confession. And then Jesus answers, "Fear not, Albion, unless I die, thou cannot live. And wouldst thou love one who never died for thee, or or ever love one who has not died for thee? And if God died not for man, man cannot exist, for God is love, and man is love. And every act of kindness is but a little death in the divine image." So when I read that, I was taken by this reality of Jesus, and it's utterly consistent with the Gospel of John, what he speaks, the language, the tone, and I fell in love with Jesus. At that point, I didn't know that I had become a Christian in any sense of that word. I even resisted for about a year, arguing my friends who were missionaries, convincing them that I was not a Christian in so many ways. And they kept on asking, so do you believe that Jesus was the Son of God? And I said, well, yeah. I mean, who else could say those things in such beautiful ways to define love in a way that I have been searching for? And they said, do you believe in the resurrection? And I said, of course. I mean, if Jesus was God, why wouldn't he resurrect? And is that a full body resurrection? Like they kept on going, right, guys? I kept on saying, like, why wouldn't you believe that? Like if Jesus gave his life for us to define this love and in a way that we were created for, that creation begs this question, the gap between what we know to be true about ourselves and what we see and in ourselves and in the world. Then if Jesus came to bridge that gap, of course he had to show forth historically, bodily, that reality. So I would go into these arguments and they were like, you're a Christian.
Yeah, I was going to ask you why you at that point you weren't.
And I kept on saying, no. I have all sorts of problems with the church. I have this, I have that, I have this. And so, but then eventually I realized, like, oh, okay, so I am a Christian. Oh no, now what?